Planting a tree is useful, but it cannot replace the billions of tons of carbon dioxide of the oldest rainforest on the planet, the Amazon, that's currently absorbing and is often known as the lungs of the earth. In fact, a young tree can only absorb 13 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. So the priority has to be not cutting down old trees and supplementing it with new, let me say that again. The priority must be not cutting down the old trees and supplementing it with new trees, not cutting down old trees and replacing it with new trees, which I often feel is the strategy a lot of people, a lot of organizations are going down. So according to the calculator, I offset any emissions through the classes, which are teaching others to calculate and reduce their emissions. An important lesson I learned from this is that no one person can save the world. It can only happen through collective consciousness and action in support of this, which is what motivated me to set up my charity and address the root cause of problems, which is often our own lack of purpose and inner well-being, which causes us to resort to materialism, essentially. Just checking. Oh, I can see someone's in the waiting room. Mia. Oh, well, I am. Um, where did I get to? So what this is more sustainable, especially given the increasing environmental disasters we will start seeing if we do not change our current action. We have already seen vast amount of the Amazon burnt, uncontrollable bushfires in Australia, and Greenpeace statistics show an increase by 129% in fires between January and August of 2019. And when I show you the photos of the Amazon at the end that I witnessed and took myself, there is I saw myself the fires. I mean, it's much smaller, but it's still there, and it shows how common it is, really. So leading scientists also said that the COVID-19 outbreak was a clear warning shot, and given that far more deadly diseases existed in wildlife, and that today's civilization was playing with fire, they said it was almost always human behavior that caused diseases to spill over into humans. So that's taken from the Guardian newspaper. To prevent further outbreaks, the experts said both global heating and the destruction of the natural world for farming, mining, and housing has to end, as both will drive wildlife into contact with people, which is, what many scientists believe is how the pandemic came about, and something I believe too. So I returned home from Germany by bus using Flixbus and Megbus, and I went straight to the annual Amnesty International conference in North England. So I did this journey completely overland from Europe. I was very tired, and I was quite surprised that the bus trip cost more than a flight would have. I believe this is one of the most detrimental aspects for encouraging people to travel in a more carbon efficient way, and something that must be addressed at a government level. This experience encouraged me to write a letter to the Environmental Minister of Wales on this topic, and also send a recommendation to the Office of Future Generations, which challenges the government on environmental issues, encouraging them to lead by example. It also confirmed to me the importance of voting for political parties that support climate emergency. Just checking no one else is in the waiting room. Okay. My activities in the year after I returned home involved cutting back my work and meditating more, so that I had greater control over my mind and actions, working from home and moving to a predominantly plant-based diet. I have now looked into ethical bank accounts and insurance companies and moved out of unethical investment. My charity trip to Latin America led to me being selected as a finalist for the Welsh Government St David's Awards. Photo there. where I had the opportunity to share with what I had learned from my trip with government ministers and inspire other people in Wales through media interviews to live a life more conscious and balanced, taking into consideration the needs of the planet and people suffering as a result of it around the world. So one thing that I really appreciated was I was sitting next to the international minister for Wales, and she asked me about how her children could volunteer in Peru, and I just thought that was like really beautiful that that she had that motivation for her children. And I've spoken to her since, and she said to me that she took the page with my profile out on it, and she'd often talk to her children about it, and about how they should follow in my footsteps, which is nice in a way because I gave up a high profile career to basically live on not a lot of money, and live from the heart. And this, I don't know, it kind of gave me hope in the political sphere, I guess. Um, so I currently live with my parents at the moment who don't support switching to green energy at home because it's more expensive. Not much I can do about that, not my house. So, however, I did calculate that by living with my parents who have an insulated house and reducing my personal energy consumption by working to daylight hours from home and using an energy efficient light bulb in my room, turning off the heater when I don't need it, and reducing my personal water consumption, turning off electrical devices at night time, my emissions are the same, if not less, than if I was living on my own and using green energy. So as you'll see when we experiment with a calculator, what is most contaminating for the environment? Um, oh, um, oh, you're still there. Sorry, I thought it had gone. Um, so where was I? I've nearly finished. Uh, uh, um, So as you will see when we experiment with the calculator, what is most contaminating for the environment is the larger the house and the fewer people living in the house. Collective living or smaller houses are the most efficient way of helping the planet. In addition to green home energy, I also try to inspire my family to live in a more environmental way, by not wasting food, buying locally and less plastic, or reusing any plastic that is bought, turning off lights when they're not needed, and they have helped me to stick to a predominantly plant-based diet. I found it's much easier to change conditioned habits when we have the support of those around us. So in the following year after my trip, I took a flight to France for my sister's wedding, which was an unavoidable omission, because I was also doing training to be a counsellor at the time, and it wasn't possible for me not to take a flight. But I aimed to offset it with the workshops that I gave after, which I did, in collaboration with Greenpeace and also through the actual counselling work that I've done with the NSPCC. I've not bought anything new, and I broke convention in Indian culture by recycling an old outfit for my sister's wedding, which I have a photo of here. There we go. So this was in 2006, for my first sister's wedding, and then this was in 2000, 2 years ago, 2020, for my second sister's wedding. So yeah, it's not really normal in Indian culture to reuse the same dress, but yeah, that was, I believe it's very much about leading by example and breaking conventions to a certain degree. So I cycle and walk most places locally and use public transport, or collective travel for long trips. I rarely eat out or buy takeaways. And I've evolved to a stage where I'm exploring more internally through meditation rather than externally through travel, which also made lockdown a lot easier for me. So my main emission 1 year after the trip was the flight. Um, so this was a few years ago, not now. Eating some vegetarian food from India, so it's not locally produced, and non-renewable green energy in the home, which I calculated to be around 7.6 tons. Although I would say that I have offset some of that through my charity work. I believe flexible thinking is also important. So reusing or recycling any plastic you might buy, if you do want to eat meat, being pragmatic about when you might do this. So, for example, at a party when it's already provided, rather than buying it and helping the growth of the industry. And most importantly, not wasting food. If you can't avoid taking a flight, you can try to make a minimal impact by buying a cheap ticket, carrying on your luggage, economy class, taking your own food on board, and offsetting where possible. In the workshop, I'll share with you what my emissions are now, 3 years later. I'm sorry, we've totally run over. Um, I learned it is a gradual process. Step by step, we can get closer to the necessary 2 tens, with or without leadership from government, big business, and enterprise, which are the biggest polluters. So my conclusion from this experiment is that before I took my trip to Latin America, I was living quite an unconscious and ignorant lifestyle that was causing me a lot of daily stress that I didn't know how to manage, and I had no inner well-being. This led me to want to eat out, eat meat, with no control over cravings, buy new things as a distraction from life's difficulties, take holidays, watch TV as a temporary escape. I had no idea that banks, insurance companies, and pension money were funding the arms industry, oil and gas, and many other industries that are causing a lot of damage to humanity and the environment. In my ignorance, whilst I would cycle 30 miles to save emissions, 13 rather, not 30, to save emissions, the money I was earning was contributing to the billions popping up these very harmful industries. It was really quite illogical. Through my trip to Latin America, I was able to teach about how to offset carbon emissions, inspire children to think about what they wanted rather than what society and family expected, which is often large families. And this is one of the biggest threats to climate emergency, overpopulation, how to manage their mind and how they can live a life of true purpose. I also learnt many new things that helped me change my own unhelpful behavior patterns, such as the pain animals go through so they can be put on our plates, how to grow my own food, so I'm not dependent on buying it. And ultimately, it enabled me to live and inspire others to live a more sustainable lifestyle on my return. Whilst I do believe we need to find more carbon efficient ways of travelling, um, I also think if we stop traveling altogether, we would lose the opportunity to challenge our habitual thinking patterns and overcome our cravings. Travel helped me to open my mind to a new way of living and gave me the opportunity to develop a deeper appreciation of nature and compassion for people that I met on my trips who are suffering today in the present moment as a result of climate emergency. Um, so so this was some of the children that I helped inspire, and some of the beautiful things that they said was that it might be something like that they wanted to travel, rather than just, well, I'll leave school early because I'm expected to have a big family. Um, it was common in these areas for children as young as 13 to start having children of their own. So this is in Oruro in Bolivia. You can see how big the city has gotten. The indigenous people lived the highest up. Um, and this is the lake. So there was a lake there in 2013. When I was there in 2018, you couldn't see the lake anymore. And there was a big problem with accessing drinking water. Um, so this was the Amazon region. This is the heart of the Amazon going through Brazil. And you can see here, like where the deforestation is, and the levels of destruction. So here you can see that there's almost you can't see any jungle. It's all been destroyed. This was the fire that I was
Wow.
talking about. Um, that you can see here. And this is one of the plants that had been created in the Amazon jungle. So the forest had been destroyed. I think that that was a cattle farming plant, a slaughterhouse, or it was for soy, one of the two.